Well, welcome to Streaming Star Wars, the live Star Wars chat every Friday night. We like to think of it as sports talk radio for Star Wars nerds. I am Pete Fletzer. I am excited to be joined, as I am every week now, officially by Chris Ryans and my good friend Nick Milkey. Gentlemen, how are you doing this evening?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. You're not selling it, Chris.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. He's given us that very regal introduction, and I like it. I am also fantastic. Excited to be here. I texted y'all this afternoon and said, this is what I'm looking forward to today. Not a terrible day at work, just a normal day at work. Lots of things going on. And I just look forward to Friday nights with my bros, hanging out, talking, doing what we do.
Hanging out. Well, it was we had we're going to cover a handful of things, and as things do in Star Wars, just like in just like Cassian, he had big plans, and they got shot.
Turns out not so much.
By circumstances. Yeah. So one of the things we were going to talk about tonight was we were going to talk a little bit about the report, the incorrect report of the demise of the viewership for Andor, but we're still going to talk about who's watching it, what's going on, and how people are talking about it. We're going to get to that in a little bit. And we're also going to spend some time kind of discussing what we got out of this particular episode. But before we do that, Nick, why don't I turn it over to you to kick us off?
Absolutely. As usual, we love to do housekeeping. We love to, cover some business at the top of the show. ATGcast Patreon. I always want to call people's attention to that. If you want to be a part of our live recordings when we record around the galaxy or Podcast of the Wills, which we are back in the groove of. Pete recorded this week, had a great episode with Amanda Dibert. Dibert
is how it's pronounced.
Dibert, okay. Excellent episode, came out yesterday. I'm going to be recording again this next week. We've got Tim Barnes coming up, who's one of the hosts of the Ubnub podcast. Nice. And I've got a couple other folks in the pipeline. I know Pete's working on some more guests. So if you would like to watch us record those live and kind of get a sneak peek before the episodes come out, join the Patreon. We also do Patreon calls. We do swag. We've got some stuff that we've been talking about, getting our act together, getting back in touch with you guys. We appreciate those of you that already support us, and we would love to have the rest of you join us as well. So atgcast.com can get you all that information, can get you information about merch, t-shirts, all the shows, all the things. I think I do want to, we need to take care of some important business right now. And I'm glad Pete switched the screen because I need to kind of have my moment to, just throw myself upon the altar of the sports gods. If you remember last week, I think we talked about it. We had a little baseball bet as a diehard Braves fan and Pete as a Phillies fan playing each other in the first round of the playoffs. We had what we like to call the bottle bet, and it was loser sends the winner, not through the U.S. mail because that's not allowed, but through the magic of things. The loser sends the winner a bottle of booze because we like booze and that's what we do. Well, it turns out my beloved Atlanta Braves did not win. The Phillies won. And so by the magic of, teleportation and whatnot, Pete got his box in the mail today and he has saved it for this special moment right here. So without further ado, this is me paying off my bet to our friend, Mr. Fletzer.
Yeah, so the box has been opened simply so I can remove my address and Nick's in case it showed up on screen. I mean, if you would like to mail us things, just DM us and we'll decide if we feel like you're trustworthy. But so I'm opening the box right here. We have a Star Wars sticker. I believe there's a sticker. Oh, it's got and it's got some questions in there. A little note. Says go Braves, which is a little late. And let's see look at this very well packed, very well taken care of bottle, because that was my biggest fear. I'm glad I didn't lose simply because I don't know that I'd be able to manage
I was very
appropriately
nervous
packed
about
them.
this. So
Yeah. Okay, so it's wrapped in a Kirkland box of sparkling water, and comes with its
and the
own.
actual
This is how you know. This is how you know I'm a Philly fan. I'm going to hold on to this for if they win the series. I can.
the actual brown bag from the state store where that bottle was procured. So
Fantastic. This is a bottle of original Alabama. I was drinking it. Alabama style whiskey. Clyde made this. All right. So what do you got to tell me about this?
Made local here in Opelika, Alabama, which is just up the road from us. And it's just a good local Alabama whiskey. So I
like
thought,
local
if
whiskey.
I'm going to send you booze, why not send you something from where I'm from? So
Well,
it's not
thank you,
moonshine,
my
but
friend.
it's actual whiskey. So
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to try to open it so I can drink it during the show. But that's great. And well, hopefully the Phillies can hold back the Padres. It was 1-1 when we started the show tonight, so I'll be keep an eye on the phone there. As our good friend Chris can attest to, living in Philly, things get weird in Philly when Philly teams win. So
yeah, bad things happen. People do very dumb things.
So
when they win.
Right, they do worse things when they win than when they lose, which is very, very strange. But thank you very much, Nick. I appreciate it.
Of course,
you're a good Lannister. You pay off your debts, and
that's
I
right.
Appreciate that.
That's right. Well, if you're gonna crack that open and get a little bit in your glass, we do have a toast we want to raise tonight. It's a special day. Not only do we want to toast our viewers, shout out to Jeff, Matthew, Brian, TW, Dale, Blue Bantha Milk was in here a little bit ago, JD, lots of friends hanging out. Glad to see all of you. Glad to hang out tonight. But we also want to raise our glass because today would have been the 66th birthday of our beloved Princess Carrie Fisher. Gone too soon. We miss her. We love her. I see literally earlier this week, somebody posted one of the little things that she had about mental health. And it was like a little sketch of her and whatever. And just the impact that she had, not only on Star Wars, but on so many movies as a writer that we love, just who she was as a person. If you've never watched her one woman show that she does, I think it's on HBO right now.
Yep.
I think it's called The Carrie Diaries, but it's phenomenal. And just her story is unbelievable. She was an unbelievable woman and we miss her. So we want to raise a glass to her on what would be her 66th birthday. Cheers.
Happy birthday. Happy Star Wars.
I don't drink. Take a little
all good.
This is good stuff. I like it. This is really
good. Absolutely.
Let me ask you guys one question about Carrie before we get into things.
Yeah.
And since we're all of a particular age, was she your first crush like she was mine?
No. My first crush was Olivia Newton-John in Grease.
Nice.
Mine was Catherine Bach in The Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh,
Daisy
good one.
Duke.
Very good. Yep.
Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher was not that far behind, but I don't know if it was just because of the age and the range, but Catherine Bach hit before Carrie did.
Yeah. I did not like Paul Simon for a while.
Yep. Fair enough.
So totally jealous of that little jerk.
Yep.
And
Alyssa Milano was definitely on the list as well, Jeff.
Which I love. That's what I love about Guardians of the Galaxy. The ship's called the Milano. And we also have Matt with us again tonight. Thanks for hanging out again, Matt. You're an OG with all of us, but Matt has a picture with her. He got to meet her, so we are love hearing his story on that. So maybe Matt, when we do the call-ins, maybe come on and tell us that story.
Tell us that story.
But so let's move into episode 7, Andor's seventh, and I'll turn it over to Chris in a second, but I always say, without the previous episodes, this one's not as great, but it still always feels like the best episode. So, Chris, why don't you lead our conversation on what we thought of Andor?
Well, I was just about to say that this is I feel like a goofball when I say oh, this is I thought the last one was the best one, but this one is the greatest. And I try not to say that, but it's just it's really good.
It's really
It's
good.
really good.
It was really good. I loved how we were able to get every major character in this
Yes.
one and push their character and push their stories forward. It was it may not have it was pretty much its own. I would say it's a bridge kind of episode, to the next arc, and I can't say this enough that I don't need pew pews and lightsabers or anything like that. I don't need any of that. This is just as exciting, just as exhilarating, just as anxiety inducing, and it has that kind of tension on its own, with the suspense and everything, without having to do the any of the action. I honestly don't need action in this one, and there were so many great points in this. Cyril, who I'm really starting to feel for this dude, but I know things are going to go a little wrong there. But I think he's well on his way to linking up with Dedra. I'm pretty sure that's happening.
Yeah.
Just seeing how his mother breaks him down, and any chance she gets, she's trying to keep him strong or make him strong, but she's just destroying this kid. The relationship, or I would say the relationship with Luthen and everyone, is where I may have thought it was one thing earlier in the season.
He's taking slight turns.
Yes, yeah, and and I'll tell you this: I get what he was saying about he's hitting the fast forward button a bit. As far as people need to see what the Empire is all about, and we're going to have to do bad things are going to have to happen so that people can see what the Empire truly is, and that is a double-edged sword. Like I was saying that to someone, I think on Star Bros, it is a double-edged sword. What he's doing, it's needed. What he's doing, but it's so dangerous, and it goes against everything that Mon Mothma stands for, which makes me think back to her confrontation with Saul Guerrero in Rebels. It's almost the same thing, and she stays the course.
But I'll tell you, Chris, this is why I posted it yesterday. I posted it 2 weeks ago. My theory, my belief is that Luthen is backing Saw. He's feeding money to the partisans, and I mean, we don't know that yet, but that's my prediction, and I think it makes sense because he's basically come out. I think, to me, what was great about this episode was that what started to happen was you really are starting to no longer know who you can trust. You never, I mean, because the lines of all Imperials are bad. Again, you said it last week, Chris. You're rooting for Dedra. It's weird, but you are. And on the other side, how did you feel when I'll tell you how I felt when Luthen surprised Mon Mothma? She didn't know. I think we all assumed she knew about the heist, and she didn't. And now I'm like, wait a second, wow, this guy really is. He's playing dirty where he can, and even dirtier is what's her name? Ladra,
Claire.
She's there telling Vel to go kill Cassian. So it is a little bit crazy. So Nick, what were your sort of reactions to this episode?
I definitely agree with Chris. I think one of the things that was so fantastic, and it really is the mirror side of what you said so much last week, which last week that episode was all in one place other than the tail end when they start to get word of what's happening in the heist and all that. This episode is the opposite of that. We go all the places. We go to Coruscant. We go back to Ferrix. We go to, is it Neamos, the beach planet? We see Cinta, I assume back on Aldhani with that shot of the Star Destroyer going overhead that we've been waiting on. I love, of course, that we get, for anybody that wasn't fully satisfied because it stayed in one place last week, well, here was your week. We went everywhere else and got all those different stories. I love the Imperial part of this episode. I loved seeing Yularen in there in what appears to be inside Spaceship Earth at Disney World. Somebody posted that on Twitter. The wall on the inside of that room. But those meetings, and literally every time I talk about it, and I talked about it with Bad Batch, and I've said it every week now, so it should be a drinking game. The minutia of the building of what the Empire becomes. Literally, he's saying the Emperor is about to introduce a package that is going to take away, the ISB is now in charge of everything. We have, nobody's going to stand in our way. We've taken all the power, the increasing of the sentences from 6 months to 6 years. And, all that kind of just, we're seeing exactly what the Empire became that we come into in Star Wars in 1977. We see how it gets there. And that's utterly fascinating. Brian's exactly right. It's a world building episode on multiple fronts.
Absolutely.
And that's what I love so much about it.
Yeah. I'd say one thing that did take me out of it it took me like a good 8 seconds before I was like, okay, Andor, this is still Andor. Because I really thought that Crockett and Tubbs were going to come out of nowhere on this one. What was it? Niamos? Was that the name of the planet?
Niamos,
yeah, that was Space Miami. That was I love that locale. That was fantastic. And oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The one thing about that, first of all, I want to eat pizzos. I don't know what it is, but I want to try it. But it really hit close to home, and like my I know my heart rate jumped and whatnot when I was watching that scene. These kids, I don't know, they were defacing property or something like that, and they're running from the shore troopers, and he's just walking. If he would have just sat his ass down for a second, just sit down somewhere, look at the ocean, he'd have been fine. But he kept walking, and I know we're still building up to him being, the guy that we meet in Rogue One, who definitely wouldn't have made those mistakes. But it hit not in a bad way, but it hit in a bad way, but not like when it hit too close to home. When that cop, that cop stopped him, was like, "You're a part of it."
Yep.
He's like, "No." He's like, "You're a part of it." I'm like, "There's no way out for this guy." I was like, "There's no way out for him at this point." Right then and there, I was like, "It's over." And to me, I know people are equating it to, almost like racial profiling, what cops do here, and to a degree, but for them in that universe, it's all-encompassing power and drunk with it, and being able to do whatever you want, and no one's going to stop you from and as far as the cops go, as far as the troopers go, they can do whatever they want. If I say you were with those guys, you were with those guys.
Well, and
that was just
it was there's been a lot of talk about how Andor was going to sort of represent the current state of politics and the current state of the world that we live in. And this episode, the last 5 minutes, was really kind of showing that. And in light of videos that show up on all of our timelines every single day of a police officer pulling a kid out of a car randomly for a tail light out, and then arresting him, and then pushing him to the ground and fighting him because he was just trying to defend himself or just trying to be safe. That's what we saw there. And then the crazy sentencing. I mean, a 6-year sentence is kind of a death sentence, right? It's like beating a kid up in the street. And so to see the Star Wars police acting like the real world police that we're seeing,
it's terrifying.
It was terrifying. And it was done so well that again, it's so funny because you think, like, is it hitting you over the head with it, or is it just obvious? And I don't think it hit you over the head. Like it wasn't, they didn't tie it so closely, but you knew it was happening, right? You knew it was making the connection.
Yeah. Something else that I really liked in talking about just building the world of the, building the Empire, building what we know the Empire to be, was, you mentioned it, I think last week, Peter, maybe it was the week before. Up to this point, the troopers that we have seen have been that Mimban style hat, face available. This week, we got straight up stormtroopers. And because, we mentioned it, when that shore trooper showed up, like, I cheered a little bit because I love a shore trooper from Rogue One. I love that.
I love that design.
I do
Yeah.
too, and it's
Yeah.
one of my, it's
Not
in
anymore.
the upper list of favorite troopers. But just seeing that, but also like when Clea and Vel go to have their little meet up, and she's walking through. There's a point where like she walks past a bunch of stormtroopers, or maybe it's when Cassian's back on Ferrix. Maybe that's what. Anyhow, there's a point where there's like some lines of stormtroopers, and all of a sudden you're realizing, oh wait, things have changed. There's now police posted in the streets, and they're not, the dudes with the big weird helmets on. It's stormtroopers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Continuing to give us that visual change to go along with what we love so much, which is Yularen saying the ISB, is now in charge. The Emperor has assured me, he's like, I spoke to the Emperor last night. He told me the ISB is going to be in charge of this. And, we're going to hold all the power going forward. It's so good. I mean, it's not to be cliche, but it's so freaking good.
Yeah. And Matt from Blue Bantha was saying, that a lot of the people in the credits have done those British dramas. And it's funny because the best way to describe it for me is it almost feels like, I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of, you don't realize that you're not seeing action, but you're so deeply drawn in to what's happening. And it's funny because I don't know if I felt like it was rewatchable as a result, but then I started watching this episode a second time, and it was incredibly watchable. So yeah,
it's just wild. And of course, we have the moment at the end too where it's obviously not K2, but that reveal shot of that droid coming up over the top of those steps, I gasped a little bit. And I knew in the moment, I was like, it's too early. We know, what they've told us.
Yeah.
But it's also reminding you like these were just things. And that's going to actually add weight to the story when Cassian finally gets K2, because we're going to have seen one hold him up by the neck. We're going to have seen two other ones dragging dudes through the streets. And we're going to have more of a context for what that means for him to have a reprogrammed Imperial security droid as his partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing, I just like, if I keep going back to this scene, I keep thinking about this scene, is that Cassian, like, he answered every question. He responded correctly with everything. Oh, you're sweating. Well, it's hot out. Well, I'm just walking. Oh, I'm looking for this place. I'm not with them. I don't know what it is. Like, oh man, like that just oh, that is nightmare scenario for me. Being in a situation like that. And I mean, I knew he wasn't going to die. Of course, we know how he goes out. But
and even with the sentencing, like that's mandatory minimums. Like that's been another problem in this country for a long time. Yeah. And again, and of course, that's an imperial change. That's what does he say? Anything that even remotely hints at a problem or a threat to the empire.
Yeah.
No,
and they tacked on these charges on him, like a anti-imperial such and such. He's like, I never said anything like that.
He's like, I was just
a tourist. Yeah.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, take it up with the emperor. Like it just, that level of hopelessness. I was like, man, oof. And a couple of wrong moves, and we are in that kind of situation.
100%. I mean, the judge is just literally sitting there eating, some sort of snack nut, and just like, whatever. 6 years, move along. Yeah,
I've got 20 more after you. Keep it going.
Yeah. So you mentioned K2, Nick, and as a lot of K2 is like K2 and Krennic are my two favorite Disney era characters. And what are your thoughts on there's been some fan theories that B2's brain ends up in a K2 as so. The reason I love that concept is because the little we saw of B2 in this episode, and I don't think enough people are talking about the scenes between Marva, B2, and Cassian. It was the most real Star Wars has ever been. And the fact that the droid is sitting there like a kid, like but stay, please stay, don't go. And
when he walks in the door, where have you been? Like right at the beginning.
Literally heartbreaking. And but so what do you guys think? Do you think some of B2 ends up in K2?
I was firmly on no until like 4 seconds ago. I think that would be nice, but I mean, like they sort of did that already with L3 and the Falcon. But
They did, but it'll make K2's death in Rogue One hurt.
oof.
Yeah. I think, and of course, I don't fully understand how droid programming in the Star Wars universe works, but
Right.
I don't think there's necessarily B2 hardware in K2. But I think that it's possible that if Cassian has choices in how does it respond to me, how does it, like I could see him programming it in a way that reminds him of K2 and possibly even reminds him of Marva, a little bit of the, the back talk, the sass, he doesn't want a droid that is 3PO and completely subservient and not gonna anything. He needs that somebody to give it back to him and to, to interplay. So if he has control over those kinds of things, I think that it comes from his programming standpoint, not necessarily a hardware point. Yeah,
because remember Cassian did say, like, when he was talking to Jin about K2, he said
side effect of his reprogramming.
Yeah, his side effect is he says anything that comes into his circuits.
Yep. Well, maybe at the very least, Cassian was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna take the filter off because I love that about B2 or something."
This is completely random, and it literally just hit me while we were talking about this. Didn't we see in one of the trailers for this show the Babu alien?
Oh yeah,
yes.
Babu. That's Mandalorian.
Oh, that's Mandalorian. I was going to say there could have been a programming thing there, but never mind. I stand corrected. I was like, what if there's a Babu just to reprogram K2? But okay, moving on.
Yeah, the one thing also that kind of hit home, like I'm a mama's boy, like through and through, and seeing him, talking with Marva, because I don't know if there ever been, besides Anakin and Shmi, I don't know if there's ever been any other like mother-son moments.
Right.
And that, like, I was just like, oh,
it's so powerful. And her saying, I'm too old, I can't keep up. Like, I'm going to stay here. And the flashbacks to Clem, the feet hanging in the square, like that power, like she's been through it already. And that's, that wears on her and carries her story, which affects the decision she makes, which is very powerful.
And one of the most powerful things that has ever been said, and I think in all of Star Wars, is when they were talking about, like, the barricades are being set up or whatnot. Like, well, they can't get into, when she said that one line, I'm trying to paraphrase that line, but they can put up on the barricades they want. They'll never get to me, because she's like, in saying like she'll be in her happy place, so to speak. Like they'll never be able to break me down. I love that so much.
Yeah. And the fact that she was inspired by Cassian and he'll never be able to tell her.
Right.
It was the Aldani heist that inspired her to be like, you know what? Nope. I'm too old for this. I'm going all in. She said that was a hero, and he can't admit to it to her, which also says a lot about the situation. He could have told her anything. He did tell her everything. She saved his life, and then and now he can't even admit that he was that guy.
Well, and I wonder, and this is a great point TW threw in the chat earlier. He said, what I thought when Cassian got home? I thought maybe the house was bugged because of everything, because of the the Imperials that came through when he left before. He may have been being careful. Like, he may have known, I mean, I want to consider I'm safe, I'm home, but at the same time, he doesn't know that he is, and he wouldn't want to bring that on her. Incredibly good.
Yeah, so deep, the entire episode. Make sure to have your thoughts ready on and be ready to join us on the calls. There's still a lot to talk about with this episode, but we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about, is anybody watching the show, and why are they comparing it to other Star Wars? Is that a legitimate thing to do? So we'll be right back in just a minute.
This is Clanker.
And I am MK0.
And we're here to tell you about Geek John Toys and Collectibles. What the hell is a John?
John is a slang term that is commonly used in the eastern United States city of Philadelphia, meaning virtually anything.
Ah, so nerdy stuff then.
I would assume so. Please continue.
Right. Geek John Toys and Collectibles is your pop culture destination for all the plastic crack you're addicted to. From action figures to comic books, from Funko Pops to high-end merch, they have the stuff from all the major and indie companies alike. Check out their eBay store to see their wide range of items.
Find them on their eBay store at ebay.com/USR/GeekJohnOutpost or email them at geekjohnoutpost@gmail.com.
Geek John, these are the Johns you're looking for. Oh my maker, I can't believe they made me say that.
That John was good.
All
like
right.
That John was good.
That John was good. Yeah.
That was good stuff. Well, so thank you for coming back. Listen, we were very excited this week to just figure out what is happening. Why are people not watching this show? The data came out from Parrot Analytics that showed a flat line for Andor, showing that the viewership was low. Forbes magazine, who for some reason hates the Disney era of Star Wars, jumped all over that. It became a Forbes story. It became cannon fodder for all of the clickbait sites. It became an argument with a guy who hits my DMs on a regular basis, telling me that Star Wars is dead because Rian Johnson screwed it up. I don't know how he made that connection, but he did. And then today, Brandon Katz, who is the publisher of that piece of data, and I'm, preparing, we're all preparing to talk about this in the show today. And Brad just, this morning at about a little earlier in the day said, last week I tweeted about Andor's audience. Now, Brandon Katz is at Great Catsby on Twitter, and he's the guy who published the data from Parrot Analytics that said Andor is flatlining. He said, last week I tweeted about Andor's audience demand lagging way behind the other live action Star Wars shows. While Andor is behind the others at this point in their respective runs, I input the data incorrectly and it's performing much better than the initial tweet showed. He goes on to say it has exceptional demand in several instances. I apologize for this mistake. 100% on me. I'll be more careful moving forward. And then he says he's deleting the tweet. Guys, it's too late.
Yeah.
What it has done though, it was creating. It was more additional ammunition for the argument from the week before, which we didn't get to last week, which we considered talking about, but there's this argument from people who are trying to find a problem, or better yet, not even trying to find a problem, but trying to sound pseudo-intellectual and trying to make a case to say that this is better than the other Disney Star Wars. And it's a shame because nobody's watching it, but this makes the other Disney Star Wars look cheap. It makes it look bad. It's not as deep. Clearly, Disney hasn't put the effort in. I'm paraphrasing, but these are a lot of the thoughts. Guys, how do we go about, first of all, clearly the data is wrong. He didn't replace the data. He didn't share what the right data was. So people are watching it. And I don't think that there's any argument from anybody here that this show is fantastic. It's done in a very different way than all the other shows. They're almost becoming like a comic book versus a novel versus a feature film versus animation, right? It's a different way of telling a Star Wars story. But for you guys, let me throw it to you. Does this change for any of you the way you look at any of the other Disney Plus live action that we've gotten?
No, because they're each their own thing, and that's how I view it. Like for me, Mando was not going to be Book of Boba Fett, and Book of Boba Fett is not going to be Bad Batch, and Bad Batch is not going to be this. And I didn't come in expecting it to be. And I know I'm an outlier when it comes to Star Wars fans who spend time on the internet. As a general rule, I don't cast what I think it's supposed to be onto something that hasn't come out yet, and then pitch a fit when it's not that thing. In fact, weird, I know, but I usually wait till it's completely over with before I make a final decision on whether it's good or not. I know that's weird.
Insane, sir.
I know. I'm out of my mind over here.
How can you even have a Twitter account if you don't come out?
How can I call myself a Star Wars podcaster and streamer?
You have to hate it before you see it.
That's right. That's right. It's all about the knee-jerk reaction. All about
But that's just it. That's just it. Like it literally, and of course we say all the time about if it makes you mad, why are you still here? Why do you keep coming back? Like that's not even about this. It's about watch it for what it is. Like this is a different story. This isn't the story of lightsabers and the Force and wizards and Jedis, and that, like, at this time in this timeline, like, those things are gone. Like, the Emperor did his business. Order 66 has happened. Like, we're in a different place. I know that because I know too much about Star Wars. But even the people that don't, as a general rule, you just look at it and go, okay, this is different. Let me see what it is.
Yeah.
There's so many different story types that can be told. Why not tell them?
Yes.
You know, like all right, you guys may know I'm a huge fan of the Droids cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not expecting Andor to even remotely follow that formula or anything like that.
Right.
You know, like you're saying, like, you know, Book of Boba's not like Mando. Mando's not like Bad Batch. Bad Batch is not like, well, it's sort of like Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But no, actually, no, it's not.
Visions
It's not.
is another great
And
example.
Visions is not like any of them. You know, it's
Right.
I love that there's so many different types of storytelling. Like I was saying to one of my coworkers, and he kind of shot me down because that's what he does. I said, like, I like to maybe see a full-blown comedy in Star Wars.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
an oppressive government going on, but still, you can still have a story like that. So
Sure.
yeah,
Well, and it's
keep
it
and
also
don't make you don't have
brings
to make I'm sorry, you don't have to make
Yeah,
anything like Andor, you know.
Right.
But I would like to see others like that in the future, you know, but not everything has to be like that for sure.
Well,
Yep.
and it also mirrors, honestly, what we've seen in the Marvel universe between WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Yeah.
Hawkeye, and now She-Hulk. Like, those are all vastly different shows told in
Yes.
different ways.
Yeah.
Falcon and Winter Soldier is probably the one that tries to be the most like Andor. Like, it's a spy show. It's relatively serious.
It's my
You know,
favorite.
It's
favorite
my
of the,
favorite too.
yeah.
And that's a very unpopular opinion. It's my favorite of, I mean,
Far
Loki's
and
right
away.
there behind it, but
Yeah.
but Falcon and Winter Soldier is my favorite. And that last line at the end, the only power I have is to believe that we can be better than we were. Like, done. Sets me off
Yep.
every time.
Mm.
But that's just the thing. And I know Marvel has its own version of Star Wars shitheads and people that lose their mind about things, but like, but when it comes down to it, like, art is art. Like,
Right.
look at it. Let it be what it is. Let it be what Tony Gilroy intended it to be. Let it be what the writers wrote it to be. The
Let them tell
directors,
their
like,
story.
let the story play out. And when it's all the way over with and you get to see the big picture, if it's still not your thing, that's okay. Because there's another season of Mando coming. There's Ahsoka
Right.
coming. Like, we've got more on the horizon.
And I'll piggyback on that a little bit, Nick, and say, if you're 5 episodes in, if you're 2 episodes in, and it's not your thing, move along. That's totally fine.
Find
And I think
something else.
I
Stop
think that's
wasting your time.
what's so interesting about the fan base, right? There was how many people complained every single week about Book of Boba Fett.
Yep.
And then these are now the same people that say that was my least favorite show, and that's fine. But why did you torture yourself, right?
Mhm.
Like, you know, if there are shows that I want to stream that everybody's talking about, that everybody loves, and I get 2 episodes in, 3 episodes, I'm like,
Yep.
it's not for me.
Cut me.
So
I'm out.
why the hell would I watch an entire season of whatever and go on Twitter and be like, everybody says this is great. Anybody who's defending it is wrong. No,
Right.
it's just not mine. That's cool. And I think that's the thing where Star Wars is so big. Star Wars has so much to offer. You are now in a spot where you can be like, oh, this series isn't for me. Or this one is comic. Like, you guys know, to Chris's chagrin, comic books are like that's like the last thing on my list, and not because I hate the comic books. It's
Right.
just the stories that I love to see are told in different ways, and that doesn't mean that the story's not good. Doesn't mean that it's not valid to the Star Wars universe. Doesn't mean that it's not adding anything. It just means that I've decided to miss out on that, and that's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
And Book of Boba Fett's not my favorite. And if I was forced into the ranking games, which I think most of the time is just a reason for people to shit on each other, it wouldn't be near the top of the shows. Even the animation shows like Clone Wars, which has traditionally not been my favorite. But that last season of Clone Wars was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad Batch hooked me in a way that I didn't know I needed. But that doesn't mean that I am mad at Book of Boba Fett. It doesn't mean that I'm going to burn my couch in my front yard because Disney did me wrong. Like,
Right.
I'm not a Philly sports fan. What are we talking about here?
But so,
Sorry, I had to go there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Nick, I'll throw it to you because you and I talked a little bit about this, about sort of the normie reaction. Let me tell you about the reaction that I got yesterday, and then I want to hear from you because you had mentioned a couple different things before we got on the air. But yesterday I was at band practice, and my best friend who I've known since I was in grade, we were Star Wars fans together from the get-go. We're leaving band practice. He goes, "Before we go, I have to ask you about Andor." And I was like, "Oh yeah, cool, let's talk." And he's like, "Do you like it?" And I was waiting for it, and I was like, "It's one of my favorite Star Wars things of all time. I love everything about it." And he's like, "Oh yeah, me too." And I think though he was like, "It's so weird and different. I'm a Star Wars fan. Can I like it?" And it was an interesting response, and then we got into the things that we really dug about it. But it's interesting because that wasn't his response when Mando was out. He didn't stop and say, "Do we like it?" It was like, "It's awesome, isn't it?" And it's an interesting perspective to take it from. But you had a conversation today, Nick. What was that about?
Yeah, I had a couple of things, and I was doing what I think I texted you and called the normie research. I called my dad, and you and I talk all the time about talking to our dads about what did they think of it, because neither one of them are nearly as invested as you and I are, but still appreciate Star Wars and sci-fi and all that stuff. And so I called my dad this morning, some point, or maybe yesterday afternoon, just to say, "Hey, have you watched it?" And he was like, "I mean, I have," he said, "and I feel like, it was kind of hard to catch some of the stuff in this most recent episode. Like, I may have to go back and rewatch it." He was like, "But I like it." And that was it. Like, there was no hard commitment of like, this is dumb. Like, I said this, I guess the first week after the first 3 episodes dropped, he called me after the first episode, worried that he had missed something because he felt like it just picked up, in the middle of the action, because it starts with Cassian, on where Morlana or wherever he was, where he killed the Corpos and, that whole deal. And he was like, "Was there something before this?" I was like, "No, that's where it starts," which is again, very Star Wars. Episode 4 just picks up and goes,
Get the ground running,
for it. So for him, he was like, "No, I like it. It's just different." And that's exactly what he said. He said, "It's just different. I'm not used to Star Wars being like this." And I said, "Yeah," I said, "It's weird to not have lightsabers in the Force." And he goes, "I think that's it. It's just different." But then today, not a group of friends that I had polled, but by coincidence, a couple of my buddies that I'm in a group text with, one of them texted us this afternoon. My buddy Brian, shout out to Brian, said his exact words were, "I've struggled with the pacing of the first episode of Andor. Makes me not want to continue. Why should I keep watching?" So, of course, I threw in my 2 cents. And then our third friend, who's in this group chat, who also enjoys Star Wars, but is much more a normie than I am, his response even was better. He said, "I think you'll find it enjoyable if you stay with it. It's a well-crafted drama. It's about people that have been pushed to their limit by an oppressive, arrogant force, and how far they will be pushed before they fight back." He said, "It's definitely grown-up Star Wars that doesn't have much whimsy, but has lots of layers of rich character development." And I went, I couldn't have said it better if I spent half an hour trying to figure it out. Like, this guy who's not nearly as into Star Wars as I am, but recognizes good storytelling, went, "This is it. It's a good story," which is what we've said all along. If this wasn't set in the Star Wars universe, and this is why I think if I could get my wife to dismiss the Star Wars part of the title, I think she would enjoy this show, because it's a good thriller show. And that's what we watch. We watch, the Jack Ryan series. We watch the one that not Benedict Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange. What's his name?
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Oh, that is Cumberbatch. I'm sorry, Loki. Tom Hiddleston, the one, the Night Watchman, Night Manager on Amazon Prime. If you've never watched The Night Manager, holy crap, go do it as soon as you can. It's fantastic. But like Blue Bantha Milk, and I'm guessing this is Matt in the chat from Blue Bantha, the British series. This has such a British drama series feel to it. Not only the actors, but like the Bodyguard, there's a bunch of them. They talked about it on their Patreon stream a couple weekends ago. But like, it's just a good drama, and that's what makes it so good. It's just a bonus for me that it's also Star Wars.
Yep. 100%. Chris, any last thoughts on this before we move along.
I just think about that the guy who put up that tweet about the viewer numbers and like how he had to come back and he's like sorry, and then like in one hand there's like a lit match, behind him is a city on fire. He's like I messed up.
My bad.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. But I think it'll be interesting to watch how people continue to respond to this. It's been fun to, I readily admit that I keep one eye on the positive and one eye on where some of the challenges are coming from, just because I want to kind of know what to expect.
Yeah.
Because this is what we hear and this is what happens. And it's been interesting because it's been very difficult to the biggest, most consistent argument is this makes everything else look bad, which is, first of all, a poor argument, but second of all, it's basically you are saying that this is good, so why can't we be happy with that, right? You don't. For those that don't love it, cool, you love something else to Star Wars. For those that don't love it, or that do love it, just love it. You don't have to say this is better than something else, right? So I mean, I'm a high,
and that's the other.
Yeah, go ahead. Nope, I'm good.
I was just gonna say that's the other thing, and we talked about that before we came on the air, and kind of pivoting this conversation based on the changes, that Kat's tweeted out and that kind of stuff. But that's the other part of this thing, which is comparing. I made the joke earlier about ranking things. Like, it has been there's a long storied history of rank Star Wars, and every time a new movie comes out, rank all the movies. Like, I'll do it, but like you said, Pete, and it's come out, multiple times. 12th favorite, or it doesn't have to be the worst. It doesn't have to be the whatever. But also ranking literally just sets us up to go, oh, so that's the one you hate? Well, I hate you because you hate the thing I like. And it doesn't serve anything, it doesn't create. And the same thing with the shows. There's been plenty of Twitter posts that have gone out. Okay, fine, I'll rank the shows. And I'm not saying you're wrong if you do it. I'm not saying you're a terrible person. But it really just like putting it out there in that way creates a definable way for somebody to shit on the thing that you like. And if we're enjoying something, just enjoy it. Right. And,
I had this talk with someone today at work at the comic shop. One of our regulars, one of our subscribers, and he got to see Black Adam as I did. Mm-hmm. And I was like, so what'd you think? And he goes, well, there were some things in there that were done that I just didn't like, and I wouldn't do it, and da 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 da. I'm like, so is there anything you like? He's like, no, I love the movie. I'm like, why don't you start with that?
Yeah.
And then just stay with that. Why?
We're conditioned to do that. That's the problem.
I just what do you love about it? What did you love about it? If you love it, I just the negative stuff, man.
It's it's the thing that's been cliche for 50 years now. What sells on the news? All the negative stuff, murder and sex and scandal and whatever. Yep. You don't tune into the news to watch the puppy stories and the kid that rescued another whatever. Right. You tune in because, this person killed this person and this horrible thing happened. And we're conditioned as humans to respond to that more than we respond to how refreshing. Like, you just liked it. Like, it's weird. It's actually weird when people like things. Like, we're like, what's wrong with you? Why do you like that?
I get that. Like a couple people at my job, like my boss and one of my longtime friends at my work, they do that to me because I'm sorry. I like things. and they're like, well, I can't take your opinion seriously. You like stuff. I'm like, how is that a negative? I'm so sorry. I like things.
Yeah. It does not make sense. Well, cool. So we've talked about episode 7. We've talked about the way the way people are looking at the show. We want to hear from you in just a minute. We want to get your phone calls. So hang out with us. We're going to take a real quick break, and then we'll be back with your calls. All right. Do you like the ATG podcast stream? Are you a Disney shill? Do you have room on your Star Wars t-shirt shelf to support your friends at Streaming Star Wars and not have your significant other want to leave you because you get another package in the mail with some geeky purchase? Well, then you're going to love our merch shop. Over 30 designs ranging from our famous Just Shillin' graphic, designed by one of our patrons, Little Orphan Anakin, The Adventures of Gonky and Clink, Save Ben Solo, and many more. So get your t-shirts, your hoodies, your stickers, tote bags, mugs, and more. And today, I think it's today only. All merch is up to 35% off. So just head on over to atgcast.com and click on the merchandise button. All sizes are available, all different types of mugs and stickers and good stuff. Many designs are for a limited time only. So if you like it, get it today. Visit www.atgcast.com and click on the merchandise button today. All right.
Look at that.
There we go.
Fantastic.
That professional ass live read right there.
Yeah, I was questionable at best. But luckily, there are people who are more professional, perhaps, than us, waiting to get on the line.
Nice.
Nick?
That's right. Let's take some calls. Let's talk to our friends.
All right, here. Let's bring in our first caller.
Go for Papa Palpatine.
You have a collect call from.
Darth Vader.
Ugh, I gotta take this. Hold on.
I'm sorry. I made that, and I still laugh at it like an idiot every
It's
time I see
hilarious,
it.
man.
Hey, I'm very honored that I was the first guest that got that intro. That was
It
great.
totally works. Jeff, how are you, my friend?
What's up, fellas?
I like that.
Chris,
hat.
Nick,
How you
Pete.
doing?
Yeah, thank
I,
you.
I like the shirts hanging in the back there.
Yeah,
Well
I'll
done.
just take a sip of the South's red wine right here, Nick.
He's sucking
I
up
love
to the hosts at this point.
Yes,
he's got
that's
the
what
high
I'm
life.
doing.
He's got the Philly gear. I mean,
Hey,
this
I'm
man
one
knows how to
quarter
make a
Philly.
call in.
I'm 1/4 Philly because the Flyers is the only Philly team I like. So you know, I'm
right.
1/4 Philly.
We'll
Well,
take
so
that
that'll
one
work.
for sure.
That'll
What
work.
team are the Flyers from? What is that? What sport is that?
That's
Oh,
hockey.
Chris.
Oh, hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No idea.
Hey, I live in Alabama, so when I mention hockey down here, I get the same reaction. So it's fine. It's fine. There's 3 people in Montgomery that like hockey, so you know it's all good.
Is that the
It's all
sport
good.
where they run around with knives on their feet? Is that the one?
That's right.
It's the
That's
one.
the one.
That is the one.
Insane.
That's the one.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, you've been hanging out all night. We've seen you in the chat.
Yeah.
What of anything we've talked about tonight has resonated with you? The episode, the conversation about ratings and expectations. What do you got for us tonight?
Okay, so the ratings and expectations thing, expectations are always so tricky because all it does is set you up for disappointment in anything, anywhere, in any phase of life. When you put high expectations on something, all you're doing is setting yourself up for disappointment. You're not giving it even a snowball's chance in hell. Because like you said, Nick, like one episode in and people are like, show sucks, too slow, sucks, I'm out, don't care. And it's like, it's a 12 episode thing. So what the hell are you talking about? Like, ease into it. I don't care what anybody says. The first time you took a swig of cold beer, you didn't go, God dang, man, that's the best shit I ever had in my life.
I've been missing
You're like
this my
spitting
whole
it out,
life.
going, who the hell could ever drink this stuff? But, have a couple more sips, and it doesn't taste so bad. And that it's like a slow burn, and it's good. It's people just bail on it
That's
too.
an excellent analogy. Well apt
Right.
for this show, even.
Right after the show. Right, though. But, I mean, it's the same. I mean, I just don't get it. There's so much good stuff in this show. I want to take a minute and just praise Stellan Skarsgård is so freaking good as Luthen, man. That scene where he like put the wig on and he just almost transformed into Chris. He transformed into Ashy Larry, He almost like Charlie Murphy's version of Ashy Larry. You know what I'm saying? He started getting that little. That laugh and that little wave, that little waggle that Ashy Larry has. So yeah, you know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. If you don't, go look up Ashy Larry. God rest in peace, Charlie Murphy. But the way he just transformed right into that character, and then just went right out and put on the show, for the people in the store. I mean, he is so freaking good anyway. But he is so good in this role. Like give the show the chance, and you're gonna get this kind of stuff.
Right.
And it goes exactly to this comment that Cam has. He says, you can't read the first chapter of a novel and have any opinion on the quality of the story or the novel. Same with a quality 12-episode show.
Yes,
You've got
agreed.
to have time to set it up. You've
Totally
got to have
agree.
time to build. I mean, I've
And let
read
it
multiple
marinate.
Star Wars books and,
Yes.
whatever. Like they take forever and then
right.
eventually it hits. And when it hits, you're good. So
I'm in the
If
middle.
you know
of,
it's a distance run, you got to approach it that way.
right.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
I'm in the middle of the High Republic book, Path of Deceit, right now, and I'm 12 chapters in. Not until like the 6th or 7th chapter was I like, okay, you got me. You got me. So
Yeah.
You got to either
a slow burn.
give it a chance or
You don't take a piece of steak out of the package and just take a big bite out of it. You got to throw it on the grill and let it cook for a while.
That's a real good way to get sick. You know what Yeah, it's just got that Star Wars.
It's good.
On it. Yeah.
Yes, it's good. It's good.
It's a. She says it all the time when she talks about people who their kids. It's a so and so lamp. It's your wife's lamp with a Jeff shade on it. Like it changes.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of whatever. So
yes,
man, I appreciate you calling in tonight. This is so good to see your
thanks,
face.
fellas.
We've been trying to catch up this week and have a beer, and it hasn't worked out.
Nice.
Jeff
The
is
shirt.
just chilling.
The shirt.
Just chilling.
Sorry, I'm guilty. My check's in the mail.
That's right. Your check is definitely in the mail. Well, Jeff, we're going to keep it moving. We've got another caller in the background, but it's always good to see you. Cheers,
Love
my
you guys,
friend.
man.
We'll
Talk to you guys later.
Take care, buddy.
So yeah.
Goodbye, old friend. May the force be with you.
Excellent caller, always dedicated, always checking in. As everybody knows, or most everybody knows, Jeff and I live in the same town. We met actually right about this time last year on the set of The Wonder Years as extras on a TV show.
Nice.
And now he's a patron. He and I connected because we have mutual friends, live in the same town. His mom was my wife's 6th grade teacher. Like the world is weird. But always glad to hear from Jeff. But we have another caller waiting in the wings, and I think maybe a first-time caller for this show for streaming Star Wars. Definitely a friend of the Bro Axiom Network.
Oh, we know this person.
We definitely do.
Okay.
So no worries, Chris.
All right.
Let's bring him in.
We are joined by TW. What is up, TW
Hey.
McKay?
I'm good, folks. How you doing?
Excellent.
Fantastic.
So good to hear from you tonight.
This is fun. Long time listener, first time caller.
Well, we're always glad to have you. Always glad to have anybody who wants to hang out with all of our nonsense. So, what's on your mind tonight? The stuff we've talked about, where we've been in the show so far, or maybe something we haven't even hit yet. What you got for us?
As far as episode 7, I really liked it. It's I kind of said this was the episode where the rubber meets the road now narratively, because we've had all these different storylines that are all coming together because somehow Cyril's going to wind up on this. You've got Dedra who's straight on this. You've got Cassian who's dealing with his own thing. I would not be surprised, for example, to see at the beginning of episode 8 or 9, probably 8. I wouldn't be surprised to see what's what I'm looking for. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Imperials just barge into Marva's house. Like, we know he was here, and start pulling the bugs out of the walls, or like pull one somewhere and go, we know he was here. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. And then plus you get pretty much what happened, like a sort of a repeat of episode 4. Why are you storming her house? She didn't do anything. She's an old woman. Like, you get to have a chance for the actual citizens to fight back in that sense, which I thought was that's prediction. But I really enjoyed that. As far as the ratings thing, obviously, aside from the snafu of messing up the data,
Sure.
I'm not sure what it could be. Perhaps I think maybe it's tone. Maybe it's because it is designed for a slightly more mature audience. You can't exactly bring it in with the family. Again, it's obviously looking at households, so it might be something that's dependent on that.
Good
I
point.
know that the week it's in and of itself is also pretty full with regards to everything else over the last 2 months. Obviously
Yeah.
not on the same day, but over the course of a week, if you're trying to keep up with shows, you've got, especially in our broader sphere and in my friend's broader sphere, you've got She-Hulk, Rings of Power, House of the Dragon, and Andor.
Yep.
Yep.
You got 4 of those kinds of shows, and obviously they're very different shows. And I think for people comparing, like when they were trying to compare She-Hulk to Andor when that came out, like, oh hey look, it's She-Hulk's #1 even though it's been up. It's like, well, you've had a development of an audience. It's a comedy. It's the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
You've got that kind of built-in aspect to it. But Andor, I'm not sure. And then as far as the comparisons between shows, what I'm thinking to myself could be, like, I'm not sure whether it's a narrative aspect or whether it's a technical aspect, because I know some people say because of the fact that Andor has shot the majority of its material on location relative to, Obi-Wan, which was mostly in the volume, or, Mando, which was a nice even split.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to that, I think it could be that, like, maybe it's just something, because at least for me, I can't notice it in the moment, but it's a perfect example of if you were to put them back to back, then it would be like, oh yeah, this is not real, this is in the volume. But then again, there
Yeah.
are moments that are in the volume that I had no idea that aren't Star Wars. For context, the Batman, the shot of
Mm-hmm.
Batman and Selena on the rooftop
Yep.
at sunrise. When I watched the behind the scenes, I'm like, that was in the volume. Like, I genuinely thought that was a location shot. I didn't even that was amazing. And also,
Well, and I think it's
Greg
interesting.
Fraser.
I think it's interesting how these shows have evolved. That when Mando season 1 came out and the volume was this new cutting edge thing, we were just in awe of it and that kind of deal. But as we get more, a second season of Mando, by the time we get to Book of Boba Fett, like, we're trained to look for it. Like, I saw it and that kind of became a game. Like, in Book of Boba Fett, you're like, oh, I see the volume right there. I see the volume right there.
Mhm.
And then, Mando season 2, when they're, Grogu's on top of the stone when he gets grabbed by the dark troopers, like, that was location shot. Like, you could tell it. But by the time you get to Boba, like, you're like, it feels it. Obi-Wan, felt
Obi-Wan
it.
felt very
more.
small.
Yes.
It felt very small. And so to get it this way, it is refreshing, to me. But I like that. And it adds to your point, I think.
And I really, I enjoyed some of it. Like, one thing that was kind of thinking of not Book of Boba, would have been Mando, the Tython. It's so funny because it's like, I know that was Tython, but part of me is so used to Dawn of the Jedi Tython with the mountain peaks and the temples on the. So I was like, oh, it's just insert Power Rangers Corey here. Like, it was cool.
I was looking for the command center. You're right. Yeah.
I was too, but it was still cool. And plus, any chance to watch Robert Rodriguez shoot an action scene, I'm absolutely for. He's one of my favorite directors, so that's why I like Boba. I think they should have just let him go a little bit further, but that's just me, like, into being crazy Robert Rodriguez. But Andor is a lot of fun, and that's one of the issues with comparison is tone between these shows, because you got a Western in Mando, you've got basically a mob show in Book of Boba. You've got this really deep character study in Obi-Wan, and then you've got spy thriller for Andor, which is great, because I have been wanting a spy thriller, because even in my head I've been kind of piecing together what a spy thriller Star Wars story would look like, and I'm like, this would be really interesting, and putting Andor there, I think, was just a cool thing, and the performances are great. There was a lot of stuff in episode 7 where I'm like, is this where it's going to happen? I could not believe, going into the last couple of episodes, how I'm like, I cannot trust anybody.
Yep.
Right down to Clea talking to Vel about, icing Cassie, and I'm like, hang on, wait a second, what? That
was such a well shot little bit and scene, because we're used to seeing Clea hair pulled tight, hat on, in her little uniform, in Luthen shop. Like, it took me a minute to realize, oh, that's who that is. Like, as she's coming off the transport and she's following the little, was the thing in chalk on the ground? It looked like a Death Star. What was it actually?
I don't know what that
It
symbol
looked like a
was.
Death Star. I also play Magic the Gathering, so for those who do, it kind of looked like the Phyrexia symbol. But
Okay.
I was also like, part of me was also like, wait a second, because there was that tiny little voice
Yeah.
where I'm like, not everything's Jedi, not everything's Jedi. But part of me was like, is she following the path? Is that what's happening here? Are we gonna like see someone? Like
Yeah.
it was
Well,
so
it-
crazy.
I
It's
went
so
to the what I was thinking, and I had to go watch the episode because I was wrong. But I was thinking about in the Rebels episode with Saw Gerrera on Geonosis, where the Geonosian, the last living Geonosian, has the circle with the circle in it, which is like a
Yeah.
Death Star. But this was
Yeah.
very much a Death Star too. It was a circle with the line across the middle. So I'm with you, but it definitely had us all thinking. I was thinking, is it Crimson Dawn? Is it like Proto Crimson Dawn? Is it so?
Mhm.
Lots and lots of different thoughts about that, but I thought that was cool. I just want to call on one other thing that you said, TW, real quick, and that is you said from a family perspective, and I think that could very well be why, even if you do compare the numbers, if they show us what the real numbers are or the numbers that they use anyway, the rewatchability with the family is very different. I think the approach to the show is different. I think many diehard fans kind of come in, they'll watch it on their own, and then they'll watch it again later in the week with the family or that evening. I think with this, you watch it the one time, or however many times you normally watch it alone, and that's it. So I think it kind of pulls back on who's on the multiple watches a bit. So
Mhm.
yep,
Absolutely. Well, excellent. Well, TW, thank you so much for calling in. It was great to hear from you. I love your thoughts. I love having your voice be a part of this conversation. It's good to see you outside of a Sunday night Bro Axiom situation, which is usually where I see your voice. So thanks for being a part of this tonight. And we're going to send you on your way because we've got somebody else hanging out in the background as well.
See you on Sunday.
Sounds good.
thank you so much, man.
Have a good night, folks. I will see you Sunday.
Awesome.
All right.
Love that. I love that perspective, talking about the rewatches and kind of the family connect part of that. That's good.
Yeah. I say, and one thing to go back on that a bit, as someone who has multiple toy distributors, I deal with these guys on a daily basis. Let me tell you what I don't see. Like granted, I see like Andor, like for adult collector action figures and things like that, Black Series, a vintage collection, that sort of thing. Even I think they've got some Funko Pops coming out. I'm pretty sure I already ordered that. But there's nothing like there's also Star Wars toys that are like strictly like these are for kids.
Yep.
There is nothing for Andor for the kiddies, like nothing.
There's no stuffed animal B2 emos.
Well, that may be a thing. That may be a thing, but I don't see any of the other, like, there's gonna be no like Luthen plushie coming out. I don't see anything like that happening.
Hey, it totally makes sense, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Again, we're only 7 of 12 episodes through this. Like, we've still got 5 weeks to go. There's more things to happen. But speaking of things happening, we have another caller hanging out waiting for us in the background. So Pete, why don't we hit an intro?
Greetings, Exalted One.
I mean, when Brian Fennessy calls in, "Greetings, Exalted One" is the only appropriate response.
Yeah.
Speaking of things happening, I just want to mention you're probably hearing like 6 kids upstairs right now.
Hey,
Yes,
it's all good. We can hear
Family
you.
show.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
We
Okay,
like
awesome.
that there's life going on around you.
So what's
How
up,
you, my friend?
boys? Bunch of Disney shills.
Yes,
Yeah.
You know,
we are.
shilling as usual.
So I have a couple of theories that I'd like to run past you.
Oh
guys.
yes, let's
Hit
hear him. Awesome.
All
We
right.
love that.
So one that I just came up with during the show. So previously we heard about the when the ISB brought up the PORD, which is the new law that they
Yeah.
shoved through to.
Yep.
So we have to wonder, is that going to be like a state of emergency that you would see around here, where all of a sudden, like previous to the PORD going through, were stormtroopers and shore troopers acting as police officers or law enforcement. Because like you see, like after a hurricane around here or down by you guys, it's all of a sudden they call up the National Guard, and they're the ones that are responding to stuff because the locals are just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So that's like one of those things. Like, did they use that to get rid of the pre? Was that one of the reasons they got rid of the Primors?
Yep.
So
it's a great.
Also,
it's
the
a great
same
thought.
reason that during a state of emergency, I don't know other states, but in New Jersey, the sentences and fines and consequences are increased for a crime that happens during a state of emergency. So I wonder if they're using that for the reasoning why they're doing all this stuff. Why, it would have been 6 months, but now it's 9 years in prison.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. And you're right. Like, and I live in the South, and we live in, hurricane territory. We have hurricane season. Great mug, by the way. But, you have gouging laws when there's a natural disaster and people jack up the price of plywood and lumber and gas. And like, there's a reason why you're not allowed to do that. There's certainly that train of thought of, is that part of why this is happening? But I think we're conditioned as people who know the Empire is bad to look at it and go, no, these are just bad guys going, I'm going to grab every bit of power I can, which is interesting because the thing that stood out to me, certainly in this episode, and you see it in her little part of the arc, was with Dedra. As soon as they're in that big meeting at the beginning and they're having the big ISB staff meeting, and Yularen talks about, everybody has access to all records, Navy, Army, whatever it is. You see her light bulb go off and she heads right to that room and goes, I want all the records for X, Y, and Z, because she's got a mission. She's got a thing she's trying to do. She's got something she's trying to accomplish. But I think that, I think partially optimistically and real worldly, we want to apply some sort of logic to it. But I think at this point, especially with Yularen saying, like, I talked to the Emperor last night, like, the Emperor is about power. And those that are closest to him, they're disseminating that power grab. How do we grab as much power as we can in all of our localized, we're going to find out by the time, in our real world 1977 happens, and in the opening shot of Star Wars, when he says, the Senate has just been dissolved and the regional governors and all of that. So I don't think you're wrong thinking about that way. I think it's interesting to compare a real world lens to that Star Wars lens, which I love that you're looking at it that way.
But it's not only the power grab, but how they can, the legal hoops that they go through to justify that power grab.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's legit.
Speaking of Cassian going to prison, the other question is, we know from the trailer we're meeting Melshi at some point.
Yep.
In prison. So that's the question. Is that, hopefully that's the next episode.
Yeah.
It's, but then the question is, in prison, do they know that he's Cassian Andor, or do they still think of him as Keith?
Great question. Yeah, I think that's. I think he'll go in as Keith Gergo, and then he'll end up. I think that's where. I think that's where Cyril comes in. I think somehow Cyril's going to be looking at some records of some sort, and he's going to recognize the face. Because again, not a single shot or line is wasted in any Star Wars show, and they showed him staring and memorizing Cassian's face for a reason back in episode 2 or 3 or whatever it was. So I think it's going to pop up, and I think that'll be the connection, and I think that's his Dedra connection somehow.
Yeah, and you can tell he still feels like very much like that incident that just happened. Like he was still very emotional about what went down, and still you can tell he still wants to right that wrong.
Yep.
Oh, he thinks he's the victim there.
Yeah, absolutely.
He thinks he did everything absolutely right, and he is the victim, and he's going to clear his name.
Yeah, he forgot to tell the guy, like, yeah, we went to go find him, and it turned into an entire clusterfuck. So,
So
that's funny.
I have a random theory, and this is a huge leap.
Hit it.
So, like I said, we know we meet Melshi. the rebellion is breaking Melshi out of prison, and Cassian is with him. That's the only way they find out. Cassian winds up with Saw, so that's why he knows Saw, and why Saw immediately threw him in a damn prison cell when he showed up on Jeddah.
Okay.
And not until Luthen shows up with Saw do they find out who Cassian actually is.
It becomes, you know that guy? Wait, no, I know that guy.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
That's great.
It's clear that this. I mean,
It's a straight up Nick or Pete theory.
Which means we won't be anywhere
Which means
close
it's
to it.
not
Absolutely
going to
not.
happen. Right?
Yeah, no chance in hell. That's right. And I love that you recognize that in both of us.
Never.
And I, looking at that episode, that was the whole thing. Like the sentencing, this would have normally been 6 months. Now it's 6 years. I highly doubt that when episode 8 starts, we're 6 years down the road. There's going to be something that happens that gets, we've seen the shots of him in the hallway. It looks a lot like, where do they do the cloning?
Camino.
Totally blank. Camino. Like that long hallway, it had a very Camino feel to it. Mm-hmm. He's in a prison, something in a jumpsuit, in a whatever. That's going to change. Is it Luthen gets him out? Is it, like you said, a Saw connection? Is it Cyril gets him out because he recognizes pouring through records? I love right at the end when Cyril's in his little new desk pod, whatever thing. That panning out shot, the thought that went through my head was cog in the machine. Like, that's exactly that big droning Imperial thing that's going to churn on and on the backs of thousands of people and faceless sitting in, it's not just stormtroopers. It's not just dudes in those suits. It's guys in data crunching cubicles and whatnot.
So here's
that's Cyril's place. He is a bureaucrat.
Oh yeah,
correct.
He's 100%. Not only he thought he could be a leader. He's not. He is a straight up bureaucrat.
He tried, and they made such a point. And they made such a point. Like Pete said, there's no wasted anything in any of these shows, but there's no wasted thing. When he tries to give the rousing speech and everybody looks at each other like, is that it? Like, that's for a reason. He's not that guy. Are you going to suit up and go with us? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm supposed to, right? Like, he's not that guy.
So I'm going to throw an alternate thought on Brian's who's breaking him out. I think Vel is breaking him out because at Luthen's request, because the line that what can they who's Luthen's assistant? Clea. It says we can't have him running around with Luthen in his mind. So he's dangerous to be held by the Imperials because what if he gives that away? So he's as dangerous being held as he is to himself as he is to the rebellion. So my thought is Vel breaks him out. That's I like that crazy theory.
I like that too.
But here's the great thing about this show: like, there's no clear line at all. It could be
no clear line at all.
It's probably going to be some character we haven't met yet, who's like his old friend. But before we let you go, Brian, I want to ask Brian one question because we didn't hit on this at all, and it was really important that not a ton of people have talked about. Marva tells Cassian to forget about his sister, that she's dead.
Yep.
Why'd they throw that in there, Brian? Do you think she really is? Do you think that's like truly the end of the answer, much like the Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi, your parents are nobodies, or is it to throw him off the track?
No, I think it's just her looking out for him and knowing that that's what got him into trouble in the first place. She doesn't want him to get caught by the Empire for everything he's done.
Great.
If he's keeping looking for her.
Yeah, she doesn't want him to linger trying to find her and get caught.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely. Brian, it's so good to see you. It's so good to have you call in every week, even with the glorious chaos that's going on around you. That tells me
sounds like there's a lot of fun happening there.
There's life. There's life in New Jersey besides just what's happening at Pete's Goat Farm. And we're always glad to see you and hear your voice. So thanks for calling in tonight. It's always good to see you.
Absolutely my pleasure.
Thanks, man. Good to see you.
Awesome.
Goodbye, old friend. May the Force be with you.
There we go.
Well, gentlemen, we did it.
Another week, another hour and a half of Star Wars conversation. And here's the thing about what I love about the show. And next week we're in trouble because we have Andor and we have Tales of the
And we have
Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi.
I don't know. We might have to do 2 shows. We're gonna have to figure something out specifically because that's amazing. It's a new thing for Star Wars. So there's gonna be so much to talk about. It's the beginning of the next to last arc in Andor, and it's an hour and a half of brand new Star Wars animation, which is hitting all the points that it's interesting they're doing this at the same time because it's really it's prequel era fandom right there for Tales of the Jedi, and this is a huge bone for them, which is so us. I mean, but it's funny because this series has me remembering that I'm an OT and everything here is changing the way I looked at a movie 45 years ago, which is pretty wild. So, but
I just love that we're getting these different, like it's a yin and yang kind of thing that we're getting on these different styles of storytelling, like, shot at us at this, damn near the same time with Tales of the Jedi and Andor. I love that. And that just shows how large this galaxy is, how many different types of stories you can tell. I can't wait to talk about this show.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Gentlemen, another successful Friday night, a bunch of fun stuff, a bunch of fun friends hanging out, conversations. I'm always thankful for nights like this. Get a chance to hang out. Before we get out of here, let's talk about what we've got going on. Christopher, what's coming up for you and for Bro Axiom, and what's next?
All right. Well, let's see. We've got Shooting the Poodoo this Sunday night live at 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. EST. We're going to be talking about all the shows that have come out. We'll talk about Andor, of course. Maybe a little House of the Dragon. I want to talk about the show that I just started watching, and I never saw the movie or read the book that it's based on, but Interview with a Vampire. And it's an amazing show.
I started watching that. I gotta watch that. See, another thing on my list. Damn it.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. So want to talk about that. Black Adam, we'll talk about that as well. We also have this week coming up, or next week, Claire's going to be doing, I think it's issue 20, I want to say 27 or 28 for Dr. Aphra for a quick shot comic preview. She'll be doing that. Let's see, the Nice Guys podcast that I do with my partner Nick, my former coworker from when we used to work at a Suncoast Motion Picture Company back in 2000. He and I we do this podcast just talking about our different movies that we love. So we're going to be doing Galaxy Quest, which is like a perfect movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. So we have that going on, and of course Dandor next week. Dan's going to be doing his top 3 moments from this past episode right before number 8 comes out. Just get you hyped for it. And Tuesday night we'll also have Bro Axiom Gaming with Roke playing all kinds of spooky games since it's spooky month. So I think he's playing, I think Resident Evil 2 or 3 I think he's going to be playing. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Nice. Always a plethora of Bro Axiom content. If you can't find it at Bro Axiom, you're not trying hard enough is really what it comes down to.
Yes.
Pete, what about ATG Cast? What's going on?
Well, we are we're going to be, for patrons, we're going to be recording, I think, on Monday night with TikTok superstar Mesa Windu. He's going to be joining us to talk. I had the opportunity to meet him for the first time on Darth Chaco's episode a couple weeks ago, and so he's going to join us. We're going to record that, and that'll be dropping a week from this Thursday because you have an episode coming out this Thursday night.
Absolutely. And I do just want to give a little tease and a preview. I'm going to dip back into the vault this week. A funny little side story. I was looking up some old stuff. Pete and I were working on some things for ATG Cast and the stream and different things. And I went back to an episode that I had sometime last year with Connor Ratliff. And if you don't know Connor Ratliff, Connor plays George Lucas in the George Lucas Talk Show, which is started as a sketch comedy show at UCB, not a UCB. I forget where. Anyhow, George Lucas Talk Show, but also he has a podcast called Dead Eyes. And the first couple of seasons of Dead Eyes, basically the short version is in 2001, he had the opportunity to be in the show Band of Brothers, which was co-executive produced by Tom Hanks. And he lost his little tiny, like, one-line speaking role when he went back to do a second read. because he was told that Tom Hanks said he had dead eyes and didn't like him. And so this podcast has been this journey to figure out, did that really happen? Did Tom Hanks say that? Like, what is it about me that made me lose this role? It's a fantastic podcast. Everything's about it great. But he was on with me, and because I was just digging for other things, I ended up re-listening to the entire episode. And as a result, I just went, I feel like I want people to hear this again. So I'm going to re-edit it, remix it, as we sometimes do with older episodes. And that's going to be coming out this Thursday. Great episode. And he has a fantastic story. And the only tease I'll give you is it involves Rian Johnson. But you don't want to miss that. It'll drop in the stream this coming Thursday.
Perfect. Cannot wait.
Absolutely. So go ahead.
No, I was going to say, gentlemen, I think that does it. So may the force be with you.
Always.
Just one more round, friend, then homeward bound, friend. Don't forget me in your dreams. Just one more song, friend, and then so long, friend. The nights get shorter, it seems. Just one more rhyme, friend. Yes, it's a crime, friend. But you know time, friend. Time can fly. So it's good night, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.